All right, good morning, second grade. Today for reading, we are going to be looking at the book The First Dog. And this book was written and illustrated by Jan Brett. Long, long ago, in the great days of the Pleistocene, Kip the cave boy bounded down the trail on his way home. He avoided the aurochs, the cave bears, and the megaceros. He evaded the woolly rhinoceros, the wild horse, and the mighty mammoth. But he was getting tired and hungry, and he was still a long way from home. He marched on until he saw a great rock. It was a good place to stop and rest. Kip reached in his bag for a woolly rhino rib, still sweet and smoky from his fire. Suddenly, he popped a paleo wolf looking for leftovers. Wolf's nose began to twitch and sniff. He sniffed to the left and he sniffed to the right. "What are you doing?" teased Kip. "What can you smell in this emptiness?" Paleo Wolf held his snout high in the air. With his keen nose, he could smell a rain cloud across the valley, the track of a tiny toad, the pelt of a prying pachyderm, but most of all, he could smell roasted woolly rhino bones, and he gave a hungry whine. "Pooh," said Kip. "I can't smell anything but my dinner, and it's all for me." And he turned his back on Wolf. But Paleo Wolf had already hurried away, and when Kip saw the reason why, he was just able to get away in time. Soon Kip was back on the homeward trail. He walked on until he spied a cave. It was a fine place to stop and rest. He thought about another rhino rib, still crackly and crunchy from the fire. He popped Paleo Wolf looking for leftovers. Wolf's ears began to turn and dip. He listened to the left and he listened to the right. "What are you doing?" mocked Kip, taking a big bite. "What can you hear in this silence?" Wolf cocked his head. With his fine canine ears, he could hear a fish rise in the river, a leaf fall, the soft pant, pant, pant of a cave bear. But most of all, he could hear the snap of woolly rhino bones still crisp from the fire, and he gave a pleading howl. "Pooh," said Kip. "I can't hear anything except my teeth crunching on these very tasty bones." And he threw a clump of moss at Paleo Wolf. But Paleo Wolf had already hurried away, and when Kip saw the reason why, he was just able to get away in time. Soon Kip was back on the homeward trail, more footsore and weary than ever. He trudged on until he saw a big tree. It was just the place to stop and rest. He climbed the tree and reached for a woolly rhino rib, still pearly and greasy from the fire. Up popped Paleo Wolf, looking for leftovers. Wolf's eyes began to sparkle and dance. He looked to the left and he looked to the right. "What are you doing?" jeered Kip. "What can you see in this darkness?" Wolf's eyes glowed. With his sharp eyes, he could see the shimmer of a distant drop of dew, a mouse scurrying far away, a feline sleeping high above. But most of all, he could see a pearly, greasy morsel of rhino bone shining in the moonlight, and he licked his chops. "Pooh," said Kip. "I can't see anything, except, of course, my roasted, toasted, crispy, crunchy, pearly, greasy, woolly rhino rib. And you won't be tasting that, because I want it all to myself." Then Kip yelled, "Shoo!" as loud as he could. The yell resounded up and down the tree. It woke every living thing around. Instantly, Paleo Wolf's nose wrinkled, and his ears went back. His eyes narrowed, and his tail stood out. He looked so terrible that Kip threw the whole bag of rhino ribs down from the tree. "Help yourself, Wolfie!" But Paleo Wolf did not care about dinner now. His mane bristled and ridged down his back. A long growl shook from his throat. It was his last warning. Kip opened his eyes very wide. He looked all around. But he could not smell or hear or see anything. He whispered, "What do you know, wise wolf?" But Paleo Wolf was gone. There is great danger here, thought Kip. I must disappear too. And he shrank into the leafy branches and made himself very small. Just in time, for high in the tree was the most fearsome of creatures, the saber-toothed cat. She crouched, she snarled, and then she sprang. She hurtled past Kip, hidden in the leaves, and pounced on the pile of woolly rhino bones down below. All that night he sat in the tree. Kip thought and thought. He shivered over Paleo Wolf's last warning. It had not been 1 second too soon. The next morning, Kip climbed down. There was Paleo Wolf looking for leftovers. Together they looked at the spot where the bones had been, and they were very gloomy. Finally, Kip made a speech. He said, "Wolfie, if you will use your keen nose and your fine ears and your sharp eyes to keep me from being eaten up, I promise to share with you all the woolly rhino ribs and even mammoth meat that I cook over my fire." Paleo Wolf barked, meaning yes, and then he waved his tail, the very first wolf to do so. When Kip saw that, he cried, "And I will call you dog," which means one who wags his tail. Then Kip, the cave-boy, and the first dog went on home. All right, and that ends our story for today.